Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Winning the Dating Game with Your Supplier, What You Need to Know Before You Swipe Right, brought to you by Design World Magazine. We would like to thank our presenter, Dr. Ron Hollis, for being here today. I'm Leslie Langnall with Design World Magazine, and I'll be your moderator. Just a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. You'll see on your screen several boxes, all of which can be moved around to suit your preferences. The Q&A box is usually at the lower left, and this is where you will enter your questions, which you can do at any time during the presentation. We won't ask the questions until after the presentation, and they will be answered at that time. Another box to note is the additional resources box. It usually contains white papers, website information. It can even contain a PowerPoint of this presentation, so that you can look at it if you want further information. We also have a tweet box right on the desktop, so if there's any interesting points that you find, you are free to tweet them from there, and there's a convenient list of hashtags for you to use. And now I would like to introduce our presenter. Dr. Hollis is President and CEO at MFG. Ron has been involved in product development for 29 years. He began his journey in 1990 working as a design engineer for the Boeing Company on the International Space Station. His hatched track design is currently floating in space. He discovered advanced design technology, including the birth of CAD solid modeling in 1990 and then stereolithography in 1992, and these changed his life. Ron became passionate about making product development more efficient, mostly driven by the slow approach of NASA and the giant wall that existed between engineering and manufacturing, and he fell in love with manufacturing. As such, his professional pursuit has been to leverage technology to make product development faster. This pursuit was realized with the development of QuickParts.com, a business that changed the way engineers buy low-volume parts by allowing online instant quoting and buying parts over the Internet. He led QuickParts to a successful acquisition by 3D Systems. Now Ron is focused on continuing his pursuit of making product development faster by helping manufacturers grow their business with the power of MFG, a smart marketplace for custom parts. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to Ron, and he can explain all of this to you.
Thank you very much, Leslie. I appreciate that time. Well, excellent. So today, I'll give you a high level of what we're going to talk about from a perspective. What you're going to learn is what's the state of the technology and product development? How is it evolving? What does it matter to you from the engineering world to the buyer world to the manufacturing world in relation to current day technology? Then the second thing, we're going to talk about the 3 C's of supplier selection, because as product development has moved and progressed on, supplier selection is a lot more sophisticated and a lot more critical to the evolution of a product development cycle because products develop so quickly. And the last thing I want to talk about is the impact of the trade world on manufacturing. What's happening? How does it affect the product development life cycle? How does it affect you as an engineer, a designer, or a buyer, as well as the manufacturer? So 3 things, big topics we're going to talk about. Hopefully we're going to broken down so that when you're at the end of the webinar, there's 2.5 things that you remember that you can go back and apply to your business, that you learn, whatever. We're not doing rocket science here. A lot of it's just recompiling information that you know, but what we hope you can do is take this information and apply it in your business. So good stuff. All right. Digital transformation. Well, that's a big fancy word, right? In the whole world, and our current 2019, almost 2020 is now digital, right? And the big fancy word that you hear is this Industry 4.0. And it's an interesting word. And when I started prepping for this, I was like, well, what exactly does that mean? So Wikipedia helps out. And you go back and you realize that there were these 4 stages that have evolved in product development and the evolution of manufacturing, which are quite fascinating. Right? So here's one of the things you can learn in history. Back in the 1850s, right, is what they would have called Industry 1.0, and that's the creation of a machine itself, right? So you take mankind, man labor, convert it into a machine and let the machine do the work for you. And then the transformation in the early 1920s was what they called the assembly line, like Ford, automotive, et cetera, which is putting the machines together in a line. So I have a machine doing work, and I connect it with another machine doing work, and that starts to drive efficiency in the product development, in the manufacturing cycle. Then in the 50s, we get the PLCs of the machine, programmable logic controllers, which says now I'm going to start to make the machines a little bit smarter. I'm going to program to do things that are in a line. So you start to think about robotics. And then you transition to 2020, some magic thing. It says, well, this is now Industry 4.0. And when they write the history books in 50 years, this will be as simple as what I just said. But today, we would say it's making these machines such that they can make their own decisions with very limited human interactivity. So they have the programming, et cetera, so that they're in a situation, the machine makes the decision that's in line with other machines so that the product going through its manufacturing cycle is more efficient, more effective. And what makes Industry 4.0 what it is, right? It's a combination of a few big things. One of them is big data itself. There's a lot of data exists. This is a whole sector in the world now, it's big data, because we're in a digital world. And so you have this big data. I actually have to do something with this big data. And it's that big data that starts to feed us the information that we need so that we can actually teach the machines. Then we have computational power. Right? You got to have the computer power to handle the data, handle the algorithms, handle the learning. Internet connectivity, where it's a global, in the world where you have internet connectivity, Internet of Things, IoT, et cetera. Now you have the opportunities for the machines to always be communicating with other machines or other areas so that they have real-time current information on what they should be doing. And then the last piece is the BI, AI, business intelligence and the artificial intelligence. So it's the intelligence of the decision-making itself. So that's, this is from McKinsey, right? So let's say the bright guys, and this is what they wanted to call Industry 4.0. I thought it was pretty interesting as you bring it together in the manufacturing process, because that's where we are today, is the digital transformation of product development to manufacturing. So with that, next slide here we go, is what we call this BI/AI, birth of digital transformation. Right? And what's fascinating, if you go back in the past, and the past actually isn't too far away, right? You can go back 20 years, in the 90s, when the transformation started. We would say that there were essentially three phases that a product went through to go from ideation to being a manufactured product, right? You go brain to paper, paper to process, process to product, right? So you think brain to paper, right? The engineer, the designer, he thinks, he cogitates, he ideates, and he says, okay, now then let me create this in paper, right? And he draws, right? Go back the old days, drawing, 2D drawings, et cetera. Then that paper has to be converted into the process of which that part is going to be created. So it's the part to the process. And so I've got to translate that information into a process, and then that process goes into the product. We transition it out. So that's 20, 25 years ago. Today, you don't have that, right? We go brain to digital, which is a fascinating element, right? The engineer, he's sitting, he's using his powerful CAD tools, CAM tools, design tools, analytics tools, CAE, et cetera. And he's taking what his intellectual power is, and he's converting to digital in real time. And then once you have that, digital to product. So I've eliminated a whole phase there, that paper to process. And that's one of the reasons you see products are developed faster. So you have speed. Products have more agility. They have the ability to adapt to their market at a faster pace. That's good for business. That's good for the consumer, the user of the product. And products are smarter. They have intelligence to them. That's going to continue to evolve. In the next 50 years, as this evolves, your products are, have embedded electronics, embedded information, so that the truly smart parts create truly smart products. So the BI/AI digital transition, birth of digital transformation, is really one of the things. Brain to digital, digital to product. It's a fascinating area, fascinating time to be in product development and manufacturing, because you have all these tools coming together, a common playing field, so that any and everyone actually has access to them. You don't have to be Boeing. When I started, Boeing, I worked at a $250,000 workstation that only a Boeing could afford to put an engineer on. Today, a guy in his kitchen could literally have the same power to do whatever you're going to do in other areas. So, okay? All right. So why does an engineer care? Why do you care, right? With them, what's in it for me? One of the things that you want to worry about or think about is, since we can talk about this transformation of the product, is you want to make sure that you're thinking about the same level of depth and sophistication that's in your supply chain as you have in your product development. And I think that's a piece that starts to get missed right now. We have accelerated product development processes. They go through. It's all digital. but we don't think about what type of partner do I truly need that's aligned with me and what I'm doing in this product development process. So we call that the depth and sophistication piece, and we believe that you should align those heavily to where you are in your product development with depth and sophistication. So when you're choosing your ideal manufacturing partner, you want to align that selection criteria to the state and sophistication of your own company's unique needs. So if you're an advanced product development aerospace company, you can't just go use any manufacturer to be your manufacturing partner. You have to find one that's aligned to your level of sophistication, your level of needs, and that would create a good positive relationship. Square peg, round holes create a lot of problems, and so that's where you want to use this philosophy. So you say, that's great, Ron. Appreciate that. How do I choose? How do I go about doing this? How do I go matching levels of depth and sophistication, right? And so it gets into how do I measure these levels of sophistication? And we just simplify. At MFG, right, we're in the manufacturing. We're about making it very, very efficient for manufacturers and suppliers to be able to discover each other. And so we come up with what we call the 3 C's of manufacturing. Pretty easy. First, you got capability, then you have capacity, and then you have caliber. So the 3 C's. And each one's very, very important in your selection criteria. The first one being capability. What capability does my manufacturing partner have, right? So if I need a certain machining process, a 5-axis machining part, then I have to have a manufacturer who has 5-axis machining, as an example, right? So capability, right? Well, that's check 1. Check 2, do they have the capacity? So I find this guy, this company, they have this capability. Do they have the capacity to serve my needs? We always like to say about an 80% utilization of a manufacturer's capacity is optimal. His profitability gets optimized, and his ability to serve you is there. Below that, he has excess capacity. Above that, he's going to have excess problems. And so you don't exactly know where he is, but you always want to be asking great questions to understand his capacity. Because the other problem that manufacturers have, especially the small, medium-sized ones, is they don't know how to stop eating. So they get in that situation where they can't say no to an order, and that starts to create problems. And so you have to be prudent in your manufacturing partner selection and picking the right sophistication and the right depth. And that second piece is that capacity capability. Can you do it? How do you know? The third piece is caliber. Okay, so I have the machines, I have the capacity. Do I actually have the tools, that sophistication to create the quality of the product that I need for the product that I am developing? So if I have a high-end, high-tolerance, super tight part that's in aerospace, it's very unique, then the caliber of the manufacturer has to be at a level that produces that. It can't just be anybody. But if I just have a bracket for a door, right, that maybe it doesn't have the same sophistication, then I just open up that caliber assessment so that more people can do that. And you actually know this stuff. You do it as part of, but what we're trying to do here with the 3 C's is kind of make you think about they all actually go together. They're all aligned and integrated in what they do. So it's capability, capacity, caliber. And that's where we get into when you say, well, I'm going to select my suppliers, you have to realize how they start to relate, right? So in the manufacturing resource pool, which is how many people, how many manufacturers exist that can do the parts that I need based upon the capability, right? Well, that's a big pool. Bigger relative to what you're doing, but just think it's the biggest ring that you're going to get. And then as I go down, that ring gets smaller, or that funnel gets narrower as I start to say, oh, who has the capacity? As they're all full, if all the manufacturers for a certain type of process are full, of course, now your ring gets super small, right? And then the last piece is that caliber. Now my ring gets even smaller. So I got to start to select the manufacturer that's within has the capacity, that has the caliber for the part or product that I'm trying to create. So it becomes a multi-step process. And an interesting thing that occurs, and you can say, well, again, common sense, and this actually is. The thing has happened in, especially in the last 20 years. I mean, in the 90s, we went to, manufacturing sector, especially in the custom manufacturing sector, went through a pretty significant challenge, right? We had a lot of offshore manufacturing. Everything was going to Taiwan at that time, and you had a lot of manufacturers who didn't make it through that tidal. And so that reduces that capacity of the pool already. And then, we're in a pretty strong economy, especially in the last decade. And so what that does is that increases the capacity utilization. So external factors that have really nothing directly to do with you are already impacting the ability for you to select the manufacturing partner that you need. So you have to be more prudent in what you're doing, because what you don't want to do is go pick a guy because he's there. That's not the right way. You want to be very prudent. So as you move down the funnel from capability to capacity to caliber, just realize that the pool of opportunity actually starts to continue to shrink, and you have to be more prudent based upon whether your parts are. So what do I do about it, right? That's another good question. So that's where we go into what we say, relationships. And, I use the word manufacturing partner on purpose because it's a relationship. It's the type of thing that you want to build over time. You want to come in and find the manufacturer has that capability, has the capacity, and they then have the caliber. You want to build a relationship with them for your mutual long-term benefit. So we call this the 3 C's of the relationship. So you align your 3 C's of the manufacturing with your 3 C's of the relationship, and that starts to create an ideal situation for you and for the manufacturer so that you have a positive and profitable relationship together. So the 3 C's of relationship: connection, communication, collaboration. So the first one is connection. First, the identification that you have a need. I need these parts. Then I have to go out and find a partner who actually can just be on the list, right? Who has this capability, right? I get that out. And then I need to connect to them. I got to have a way to connect. And as simple as that is, that's probably one of the hardest parts that you are. We're going to talk about those ways of doing it. But finding that connection piece is highly inefficient in the market. And it's the one that creates the scenario for you where you just kind of give up and you go with whatever you found at the moment, as opposed to finding the partner that you should have. So the second piece we go into is communication. And what's interesting is the communication of a buyer or engineer, the language of the buyer engineer and that of the manufacturer may not be the same. Sometimes they're not, right? Because you're coming from the same outcome from different ways. And so the communication piece becomes critical. So our perspective on communication is try to standardize the information that you're exchanging so that the communication is at least has less friction in it. So a way that we believe is doing that is RFQ standardization. If all the RFQs that are submitted for custom parts are the same, they use the same template, same format, same information, right? Then we actually reduce the likelihood that there's something missing, right? I'm sure that people have gone out and bought custom parts. They do an email, throw in a CAD file, say, hey, I need 10,000 of these out of a machine out of 6061. Great. Well, that's really not enough information, right? Because what if there's other things? You need them by a certain date. You need it packed a certain way. You need anodization, secondary processing, or something about it that, you forgot. So it's not in the email because you're not using a standard way of communicating your RFQ needs. And so that's where we believe coming in and using that standardization makes you a better buyer, and it helps the manufacturer know what to expect so they can give you better pricing, better terms, better information on what's expected of them that drive out the relationship. And then the last piece we believe in is communication is transparent project management, meaning where is my part, my product, my project within that environment? And with today's world where we talk about IoT, interconnectivity, all things are available, you should start to have visibility into the life of your product within the manufacturer. And that's, depending on that level of sophistication of what you have to what they have, but that's where you start to say, well, I want to know more, because the more I know, the less risk is going to be induced, right? No one wants the surprise. And so that's where communication drives out. Which feeds into the last C, right, which is collaboration. Collaboration is about being a partner. It's not just being a transaction. It's about having a relationship. And when you collaborate and you're partners, when things do go sideways, when there are problems, you come together and say, how I'm going to solve them. The ideal situation is it typically is a transformation of a product, a digital element to the reality. There are things that can go wrong. There are things that might not have been identified. There are things that might drive efficiency or cost, et cetera. Having a partner that you can collaborate with because you have good, strong communication and the connection in the beginning was successful allows you to be successful in building relationships. So it goes back then, is that you want to have manufacturing partners that align to the same depth and the same sophistication as you are in your product development life cycle. I'm trying to match those. And they come back to relationships where you have connection, communication, and collaboration. Good stuff. Not like a webinar where you have no audience, no eyes, so you don't know It's like you're just talking to yourself. So how do you discover these manufacturing relationships, right? You go out and you say, okay, we'll share this. I talked about it a little bit more. This is an interesting thing, right? When I say, yeah, I got to go out and find a manufacturing partner to do my bracket that I need 5 axes. What are my options? And as simple as that is, it's a pretty interesting problem. It still exists in 2019, 2020. And it's one of the things that we focus on every day about solving. But when you say, well, what exists today, we got a little matrix in the slide. It's the risk-reward matrix. High risk, low reward, high reward. So we say, what's the first thing you can do? Google, internet search. 5-axis CNC in Indiana, right? And then I get some manufacturers, great. What do I know about the capacity? I know very little, right? I know what's the pictures they might put on their website. I don't know if it's truly their pictures or what, but the parts. So I got a little bit of information on the capability. The capacity, I have no information. And their caliber, I have no information, right? So we consider that a high-risk, low-reward way, right? And guess what? That was the easiest way, right? So it's typically the way it is. The path of least resistance gets you, not the right answer, I guess. So internet search, we don't recommend. Then you get down to trade shows. Those have only been around forever, right? I think in the early days, they were probably fun. The boondoggle, you go, you walk around the show, you get some cards, have good food, and the company's dying. And maybe some people do it, but as you get older and you're more interested in actually getting your product through the product development phase because your product life cycle is so short, the trade show becomes painful. And it's painful for both sides. The manufacturers get to sit there and they spend thousands of dollars to sit there for you to walk by, and you walk by hundreds and hundreds of booths where guys have parts on their desk, right, or on their table. Well, what do I know? So here's what you get. We say, well, I know a little bit about capability because guy has flyers, he has parts, I see the type of parts or the process, et cetera. So I have a little bit. I don't really know much about capacity, if it's a sales guy or marketing guy, and you say, well, that what your capacity looks like. Whoa, we're ready for you, right? Whether he is or not. And then caliber, right? You don't know. So you're very limited. So we consider that a medium risk, low reward approach. And it's low reward because it's the cost of the acquisition or the cost of the discovery is so high for the reward. It's a very difficult thing. You come back with your hundreds of cards, your business cards, your flyers or whatever, and then you got to remember the conversations, or you got to go back to their website, or you got to go through some notes, try to figure out which 10 shops did you really want to talk to about your parts. So it's painful. On the manufacturer side, they get their list of leads that they swipe because they swiped your badge while you're there. And now they're calling you or emailing you maybe or something, and now you got that noise coming back at you. So it's really not a positive experience either way. It's fascinating trade shows still exist, but I guess they do. And then you have directories, right? Thomas has been around forever, right? Great. When I started, I had volumes and volumes of big green books, and that's how we went and found manufacturers. You went in the book, you found him, and then he was a list, and then you call him in the old days. And it was painful. So now Thomas put their stuff up on the internet. So you get to do almost the same thing, but it's online. But here's what you don't know. You got a little bit of information about capability. You have nothing about capacity and nothing about caliber. And so what you got to do then is do your research and find out what those options are. It works. It's been around, but it's, we consider it low reward, low risk, right? Low risk because you got information, top-notch company. Thomas is excellent. The manufacturer spent money to get there, so they have to be, some guy that's not in the garage maybe. So you start to get something, but it's not efficient. So one would say, what's the best? If you go across, we would say, well, the best way is the referral, which you already know. So the referral, right, is high reward, low risk. A referral is, your peer, other people in your manufacturing sector have used a manufacturer or a series of manufacturers that can do their parts, and they say, yes, my experience with that company was good or bad or medium, or they're good at that, they're not good at this, or they're expensive, or they're cheap, but they missed their dates or whatever. You start to have peer-to-peer information about that coming back that allows you to have an assessment of the capability and the caliber. You still don't know capacity, right? So you got to go and deal with the company directly to get an understanding of capacity. At least 2 of the 3 C's you can get from the referral. And so that's what we bring up. Well, the problem with a referral, right, is if you don't know the people who know the people, then you can't get referred to it, and not all parts might be referable. So that gives us what we believe and what we drive as marketplaces. Marketplaces have been around forever. They're highly efficient in allowing buyers and manufacturers to discover each other by making it efficient so that the standardization of information, standardized RFQ, is then routed to manufacturers. The manufacturers are smart routed in that they get RFQs that align to their capabilities, right? And so that allows you to know that I'm going to the right place. Then they respond back, they raise their hand. So now you know that they're interested in working with you. So now they're starting to provide you some information on their capacity. Right? You still have to validate it, but they're responding. So they're interested in it. And then you say, well, how do I assess their caliber? And in today's world, it's a great thing, right? I can assess their caliber because we have peer-to-peer supplier ratings, right? Your peers go and they rate the manufacturer. And they say, yeah, it's a 5, it's a 4, it's a 3, it's a 2, it's a dog. They don't show up. They didn't deliver. I had these problems. That information is what allows you to assess caliber. Highly efficient, all electronic, digitally controlled, so that you can actually start to make good discoveries that align to your depth and sophistication needs for the product manufacturing that you have. So it's a unique time that you have today. It allows you to use this tool, and it's proven in all industries. eBay is excellent at allowing you to find matching buyers, suppliers, right? TripAdvisor for hotels, that's where you get peer-to-peer. You say, what's that quality? What drives that out? Or Salesforce, if you use that for a CRM, because they help drive standardization of information across multiple applications and all that. So you already have these B2B, B2C tools out there that are aligned. It's just now bringing them together in the manufacturing world to help us be more efficient and the ability to partner product development with the right manufacturing partner. Make sense? Right. Good to hear. All right. So there's a little matrix for you. I just kind of covered it, but if you want to reference it later, right, it goes with the quality of the information through the discovery methods, right? So, I talk about capacity. You got high quality with the marketplace, right, where you drive through in a referral or an internet search or whatever, you might not have that information, right? So capacity is lower there. All the way up to marketplaces and referrals have high caliber assessments, where the internet search has low caliber assessment, right? So it's a simple little matrix to help relate the same thing I just said, but you can go with how do I discover, and then how does it relate in that discovery to the 3 C's we're talking about of manufacturing. All right. So the last thing we're talking about is this trade war stuff, right? The global digital world, and you say, okay, that's groovy duty, trade war, media, blah, blah, blah. But, there's some truth to it. And where we look at what we say about trade war, well, it might not have some significant direct impact. To me, it actually more relates that we already live in a global world. Global manufacturing has existed, and the fact that everything's digital and aligned out there is actually an advantage and a disadvantage. And because you have access to global manufacturing, you can go to China, you can go to Vietnam, you can go across, you can go anywhere in the world for manufacturing. You can start to pick the regions or the areas that have the capabilities and talent that you need in that manufacturing. But when you do that, you got to realize that the 3 C's of manufacturing are actually more important, because when I'm going outside of the U.S., for instance, I have to start thinking about what are my risks, and my risks become greater, right? My relationship in that sense is more important, because when I have problems, I can't just pick up the phone typically, or I have the language barrier problems, or I have intellectual property problems. And so relationships are critical. Understanding the 3 C's are critical, and bringing those together as they wrap up is what we consider. So when you say trade war, manufacturing is there, and there's all this stuff there, but at the level where you start to say, well, what am I going to do with my product development? It's already a big enough problem that you want to think about relationships anyway. And if you have those relationships, then you're aligned in how you're going to solve the problem if it affects, if tariffs or trade war issues start to affect your product. Because you already have a relationship. It's when you don't have a relationship with a manufacturing partner that you don't know. And so then all you do is introduce risk into the product development life cycle. And we all know risk is, risky. So, we'll summarize this out, start to kick it out. Is you have the 3 C's of manufacturing: capability, capacity, caliber. And then you have the 3 C's of relationship: connection, communication, collaboration. You bring those in, you wrap them around a heart, and you find out what a long-lasting marriage looks like from manufacturing and product development. All right, good stuff. So now, what questions?
Okay, so before we start the questions, one of the things I want to mention is if you want to reach out to Ron, you can reach out at the website for manufacturing, which is www.manufacturing.com. And Ron Hollis' email is ronhollis@mfg.com. So now is the time for people to put in their questions, and we'll start with a couple. Let's see. What do you think, why do you think marketplaces are the best solution?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think they're efficient in allowing a buyer that has a need to be able to efficiently discover a supplier or manufacturer that wants to fulfill that need. And the reason it works so well today is that with internet and digital transformation, it's so efficient. Again, at MFG, you come in, you put in a standardized RFQ with all the information. It's routed to manufacturers who care. They know. We call it smart routing. So they have that capability, and then they raise their hand. They say, "Yes, I'm interested in working with you, Mr. Customer. Tell me more." And then we highly encourage the manufacturers to try to build relationships with the product development company, with the buyer, because it's that relationship piece that helps both sides. So I believe marketplaces are the most efficient mechanism to do that, especially when you compare it to your alternatives, directories or internet, et cetera.
Okay. The next question is, what tools and technologies are available in the market today that foster real-time collaboration with your suppliers?
Yeah, well, I tell you why we're blessed, man, because that's a great thing we have today because again, of internet technologies, IoT, global, this global blanket. We highly encourage interconnecting, your buying and your product development cycle with your manufacturing partners. Actually today, using chat and instant messaging. I mean, things like Slack are great, right? You create a channel, a Slack channel, communication with the right people that are participating. That's a transformation that's going to accelerate over the next few years because, email, while it's powerful, it's time delayed and everything's accelerating. And so when you have a problem, either side, the buyer or the supplier, the manufacturer, you'd like to be able to communicate that problem to the right people at the right time. And so instant messaging is one of the areas that we think is going to continue to evolve and grow so that you have that real-time communication.
Okay. So then how would you truly assess the caliber of a supplier?
Well, that's hard. So the way we look at it, of course, we like peer-to-peer ratings, right? It works well in B2C. I use it every time I take a trip, on TripAdvisor. I don't like stinky hotels. So I want to see, 4+ stars and what my peeps telling me, right? But, the other things that we do is we believe, when you get into the web and the website of the manufacturer, the information that they want to present is their brand, which is typically their website. At MFG, it's a supplier guide. I'm showing you, here's my capabilities. I've got a list of my equipment. I got a list of my certifications that I have there. And today, we actually highly, highly motivate our partners to do is to go out and have what we call 3D virtual tours. Those are fascinating. That's you taking a trip visit, a plant visit to one of your manufacturers without leaving your desk. You get in, you plop down in that factory floor, and you walk around. And it's fascinating, and it allows you to get a true perspective of how they organize their factories, how big they are, what are their people doing, are there boxes everywhere, are there lines on the floor, just structured or whatever. Again, you're trying to match your product development sophistication and depth with a manufacturing partner. And visiting the factory is the way to do it so that you get it. It's just highly inefficient to go and visit factories that don't match. So it's great if you can actually have a virtual tour, align yourself with that, and then maybe you go visit if you need. Typically, you might not even need, right? If you build strong relationships, you have to understand what you're doing and you're communicating, you've saved time out of your life and what you're doing professionally.
Okay. And another question that's come in is, you've been successful in manufacturing, and why are you passionate about MFG?
Oh, that's a great one there. So I love product development. I started my career at Space Station at Boeing. It was the most inefficient product development process you could have, right? You spend years designing stuff that you never see transform. And so that's where I got into how to use technology to accelerate the product development process. So I was fascinated with that. So here at MFG, what I love about it and what I knew it then, I know it now, is that there are manufacturers that exist that are absolutely amazing at what they do. They're the best. They're top caliber. But however, they're very, very poor at their marketing, at their selling, at their ability to be discovered so that they can leverage their genius, that capability. And what's more important is not just being discovered. You want to be discovered by the best customer for you, the best partner for you. Because when you have that relationship, that symbiotic relationship, it's positive and it's profitable for both sides. And when you can do that, it's a win-win that drives out. And so MFG is a platform that allows us to do that. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because I like manufacturers, especially in the United States, but it doesn't matter. The U.S. manufacturer is the best manufacturer in the world, and there's just so many of these guys that need to be discovered and need to grow their business, and they got to grow it with the right partner. So that's it.
Okay. Let's see. Interesting. Getting a right match may be costlier. How do you optimize? And how about developing a partner?
Right. Okay. Well, getting a right match is costly, right? And that's where you got to say, well, if I'm going to go out and discover right now, and I have that big pool, that big ring of capability, it's big. Capacity is a pretty quick reducer, right? I mean, by asking the question and interrogating the partner with their capacity, and you hope you have that honesty back from them. That starts to reduce it, and then you get the caliber, right? How do I assess the caliber, right? References, et cetera, right? Once I have that, then it's a matter of what I say, the traditional ways. Well, you go visit or you hope. Two strategies. We know what happens with one of them. What we like to do is have the virtual tour, and it starts to give me, visual, emotional feedback on that quality and that assessment, right? And I see. And then in developing a relationship, you always want to do that. Ideally, this is very true in micro niches where you say, it's a unique process. It's maybe a smaller manufacturer. Maybe you have a greater sophistication. Well, in those situations, you have to pull it out of the side and build a relationship where you're the strong partner. You help pull the manufacturer up. I've been very blessed working with a lot of small shops, and I've watched them grow up from being a $2 to $3 million shop to being a $100 million operation, right? Which is great for what they do. And they do it step by step, but they do it by having a positive partner who's helping them. And you help them with information, right? You help them with giving them candid communication. You help them with giving them performance reviews. You make sure that you hold them accountable to the expectations that you set with them before you started the journey. A lot of the problems start when you don't set proper expectations, then you get sideways, and then both sides are wrong. And then it doesn't help anybody.
Okay. We still have time for a question or two. Just to reiterate, if you want to email Ron directly rather than ask publicly, his email address is ronhollis@mfg.com. And if there are no more questions, one just came in.
Uh-oh. Oh, but the good one.
Okay. Well, here we go. Too often, our management wants our procurement department to pick a less expensive supplier for a component part. Sometimes this can be costly to a new product development project. Any comments on this? Would you like me to read that again?
Yeah. Well, I got it. I understand. No, that's a big challenge. When you're shopping for price only, right? Then you're just treating it as a pure commodity. And that works for commodities. So, when the execs think that, buying Post-its and ink cans is the same as buying, high tolerance custom parts, you probably have the wrong execs, right? So a different problem. It takes care of itself. But when you get the relationship piece, it's price but price cannot be the only thing, right? We always call it PQS, price, quality, service, right? You get to pick two. You don't get to pick one. You don't get to pick three. You pick two, price, quality, service. If you just want price, if you want quality, then you have to say, I'm going to give up on service, et cetera. So what's important out of that, right, is when we talk about relationship and those 3 C's, it's not about being the lowest price. It's about having the best price for what you're getting out of that relationship, not necessarily getting the lowest dollars. And as that moves up, especially in the procurement side, especially when you got these CFOs and account types in there, they're managing by spreadsheet. They don't understand that piece. It makes it very challenging. You're stuck in a rock and a hard spot in that, from procurement to buying and building those relationships. Difficult problem.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, just a reminder, this webinar will be sent out to everyone who has registered. It will come out in a couple of days. It will also be available on the Design World Online website so that you can view it at any time at your convenience. And you can also continue discussing the webinar or anything else. We have our own hashtag at DW Webinar. You can connect with Design World on any of the social media platforms that you see there on your screen. And we also have our own kind of a Facebook platform specifically for engineers called engineeringexchange.com, so that you can continue the conversation there. And if there are no further questions, we'd like to thank you all for joining us at this presentation, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.